Yeah, this is probably the biggest news happening right now. Pump just like there are a lot of whispers about their ICO. They just came out with a tweet where they sort of confirm it. They confirm the date. It's Saturday, July 12th. People are very split on this, right? There's some people on the timeline saying that it's max extraction, max greed. Others are pretty excited about it. Yeah, where's everyone landing on this? Nothing said on the Hivemind is a recommendation to buy or sell securities or tokens. This podcast is strictly for informational purposes only, and any views expressed by anyone on the show are solely our own opinions, not financial advice. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Hivemind podcast. The goal of the podcast is to provide an inside look into what we like to call the Delphi Hivemind, bringing together some of our brightest minds from each of the divisions to share insights, alpha, and shitposts. Today with us, we have the usual crew: Ceteris from our institutional research arm, Jan, who managing partner at Delphi Ventures, and Ventures associate, actually venture partner Duncan, also known as Flood Capital. And I'm Jose. I lead Delphi Labs, our protocol R&D arm, focused on incubating and accelerating new Web3 primitives. So, been an interesting 2 weeks. As always, we want to probably start with markets, and then I think we want to chat about the Pump Fund launch, which has just been announced probably like an hour before we recorded this, and then maybe end with some prediction markets and some other stuff. So, markets, what are we? How's everyone feeling? Maybe Jan, you want to kick us off?
Yeah. So it's been kind of a Bitcoin strength, alts choppy, but generally not doing too hot. You have like these select alt moves. I think it's just become increasingly hard to be a longer term holder in a lot of these, and that unfortunately is a self-reinforcing situation. So right now we've seen Bitcoin just continuously retest all-time highs. Equities are at all-time highs, but Bitcoin seems to be stuck. I know, leading up to um, beginning of July 4th, there was that big options expiry, and that thought, there was thoughts around that being kind of what was generating a lot of the artificial supply. So basically, people were selling calls, which means market makers need to sell Bitcoin to hedge, and so there was a chance for there to be a squeeze as those options expired, and market makers needed to close their hedge, and we did see a pretty strong pump, but um, proved to kind of come back down again. I'm still in the camp that we're going to see all-time highs soon because it doesn't seem like there's a slowdown in these treasury companies, and as more come up and they bid, I think it helps the environment for all of them. So I'm still in the camp that we see all-time highs soon. Saylor's been deploying. He's doing another at the like a big at the money raise for I think 4 billion. He announced on one of the prefs in the stack, the STRDs, which were trading well after the issuance, so it made sense to kind of tap into the demand there. I think there's going to be we haven't seen a big one pop up in the London market, and so I think that's probably going to be a big source of demand for BTC. We did see that big wallet move, right? That was the scary thing over the past week, where basically 80,000 BTC moved, and
And it hadn't been
speculations
touched
obviously.
in like 14 years, right? Like that's
Yeah,
crazy.
it was five figures to nearly like $10 billion. And everyone's trying to speculate what it was or who it was. Obviously, Ross Ulbricht was his name was thrown around just based on the timing of things, but um, haven't really seen any movement happen there. And then just reading people talk about the wallet that it was stored in, and just the insane fact that it's all been sitting there from day one. And obviously you had the jokes around no test transaction, but apparently there was one on BCH. So I think that was kind of
Well, I also think people don't understand how Bitcoin's model works. Like when you send from a UTXO, it empties all the coins. Like it has to.
right.
So I saw people like, he moved all 10,000 in one transaction. It's like, well, yeah, because like that's how it works. Moves them all.
Wait, yeah, on the treasury companies, how much of these like new ones that are popping up are like you think in kind contributions? Like, they're doing a BTC treasury company, people just like contribute in kind BTC versus like new money? Or do you think like is that where the buying's occurring, or the buying's more occurring on like, when they issue equity at a premium?
I think only the Cantor one, or I don't know if I don't think I think that was the only one I saw that was in kind. The rest seemed to be fresh capital from either debt investors or equity guys. And so I think one interesting kind of element is thinking about the size of these debt markets in different countries. And so Japan has a very big one, and I guess it's particularly relative to the equity side. And so there's a lot of appetite there for, or a lot of capacity for debt investors to participate in the upside of BTC via the equity markets. And so I think you see a similar dynamic that can happen in London as well. And so it seems like those are going to kind of continue. IBIT has been like the numbers that the ETFs are putting up are nuts, and that's straight cash that's coming in as those shares are created because people are buying IBIT, and the APs need to go out and buy the Bitcoin, so that's cash into BTC. It seems kind of inevitable, and then you have crypto week next week as described by the U.S. government. Although I think that doesn't really materialize into much. There's like a few bills being passed. I don't know that we'll get any kind of surprises outside of that, but
I mean,
it hasn't really been talked about much.
all the TradFi stuff has been doing well. Like the treasury companies like SBIT and some other ones all kind of dumped. After that, these things get announced and then they trade at stupid multiples that aren't going to work. And then I think SBIT was trading at like 10x or something or close to it. And then it dumped that big candle in like one day, like 80% or whatever. But like it's been doing well over the past couple weeks, and like ETH has been strong. The other ones that have dumped have like seemed to have come back. The ETH ETF is like getting good amount of flows now. This new Sol ETF that launched has honestly it's got like 40 mil in the first few days, and this is kind of like a small ETF with like not one of these big names with their big marketing. Like this isn't a BlackRock, Fidelity, Bitwise, whoever ETF, right? So you're seeing like, you're just seeing good demand on like the whole TradFi side.
What
Still.
what do you
The
guys
reason those things usually sell off, like the pump and sell off, those are all just very fake because none of the shares have been issued, right? So it's the same tiny pool of capital or of shares being traded
Right.
around on no liquidity. And so eventually the way basically the best case scenario is it pumps, it dumps, it settles somewhere above MNAV, or MNAV above one, the shares unlock, and then you kind of have this market clearing event where, okay, these are the investors that wanted to sell are out, and we can it sits at this premium, and now we can kind of begin the flywheel of issuing warrants
Which
or
you've had
whatever.
on a bunch of these actually. Like you've had what you just said play out on like I guess SBAT. I think UPEXI that we're investors in had a similar process. Most of these things are settling above MNAV. I agree. This game isn't over. I'm just
I think the ETH one is around 2x now,
for us?
which is wow.
which is pretty high because it dumped down to like I think 1.3 to like 1.4 on that big dump.
Just
So
one.
yeah,
I haven't looked into these as deeply as I want to. It's actually on my list. Also to read the accumulators report that Delphi put out. I heard really good things. But what's the how does this stuff reverse and these things get sold? Like I know most of these can't be forced to sell, right?
You need like
Although, as far as I
shareholder
understand,
takeover or
It
something.
very. I mean, some
in
have it
MicroStrategy's
in the
case, some of them are
bylaws.
collateralized by Bitcoin, actually. So MicroStrategy could be forced to sell. I think at some point they even said it, like 21K, they'd be forced to sell some Bitcoin or whatever.
Yeah.
But do we know like
There's no
what
like
part of this
it's not
is
uniform. They all have different terms.
okay? It'd be interesting to do an analysis on like how many are collateralized by Bitcoin versus the equity. But I guess even in the case where they're collateralized by the equity, at some point, if the company can't pay its debts, right? They the debt holders can appoint new management that will close, assuming these things are trading below NAV at some point, which seems inevitable, just given crypto cycles. Like at some point, it feels like all this stuff will be trading below NAV, and it'll be like even if they can't be made to sell, I feel like once some start selling, it could. I don't know. It seems pretty apparent to me that every cycle we get the like the places where leverage build up is also where the blow up happens. I'm just curious, like how bad it
Yeah,
could
I
be
think the
here.
danger here would just be if these were used as collateral for loans, and then that's
Yeah.
what would cause like a lot of bad stuff.
A lot of the
Because
smaller
like,
guys can't really issue debt. They've been issuing equity, so there's less of a blow up risk there. It's just this. It's more potential forced selling of the native asset to buy equity at a discount if MNAV is below 1.
Yeah.
Then like you have some of the debt based ones, but they're zero interest converts with very long maturities.
Yeah, I feel like there's still a long way to go before it gets risky.
For sure.
Unless you think there's going to be, but yeah, obviously this is kind of
Well,
like
not for sure actually.
the grayscale, dynamics in a different way, but
Yeah.
we're not nearly as far into the trade.
yeah,
But
but again, it's because that was used as collateral all
Right.
throughout. That was the like real problem. Like GBTC trading at a discount on its own is not really an issue. It's the fact that you had like all these loans
well, yeah,
against
well,
it.
People would borrow against GBTC to buy Bitcoin to mint more GBTC.
Yeah, it was like this isn't happening with these. It's like they're issuing equity, and sure, it can start trading at a pretty big discount. But what are you going to do? Like you have to do shareholder activism takeover. There's
yeah, but I
nothing.
think some management teams will just
No.
be like
Right.
forced. It will just do it.
It varies by company. Like some have
Yeah.
control and mandates that don't allow it. Some have the flexibility, and it's part of the strategy where trading below MNAV below 1, you sell the asset to buy back shares.
And some, I mean, but in the worst case, if your company can't pay its debts, right, you do have to sell assets, or the debt holders will take over the company,
Yeah, you sell assets,
force you to sell
raise
assets.
more money,
So
issue equity.
it just seems like there's a lot of because a lot of this Bitcoin is like these people don't actually want like Bitcoin exposure, right? Like, and that's kind of the danger
Well,
if this
they
sort
just
of
think this is
unwinds.
like torque on
If you
Bitcoin. They just think it's leverage on Bitcoin, which like MicroStrategy so far has proved to be true.
It's
Like
leverage
I guess
and
one
volatility.
interesting
their whole Bitcoin per share thing is
yeah.
like that. Like they think this is a better way of owning Bitcoin, essentially.
I think they 5x that since the beginning. By the way,
No, it is pretty crazy.
it's wild. But just one. So if let's say like this thing was trading at NAV and you redeemed all the Bitcoin to the shareholders at some point, like how many of those guys would want to hold the Bitcoin? That's
I think
you know what I
it's
mean.
literally just leverage on Bitcoin. Like it's just an easier
Yeah.
I
way.
don't know if that's the right question though, because if you think
You don't think
about
so?
like the holder base of MicroStrategy now, these are all people that are Bitcoin aligned for the most part. You know, you filtered out of the people that are like skeptics. Similar like where you have these tribal ownerships. You know, Tesla is similar where a lot of these people are just like mega Elon bulls and everyone who's bearish shorts and stuff. And so that being said, MicroStrategy is a unique case where I think he has controlling rights and that won't really be that much of a concern.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's the debt side that becomes more of
But
an
he has
issue.
some. I think he has some loans that are collateralized by the Bitcoin itself, though.
Yeah, it's just
Nothing
like
matures until like 2030, I think.
super low
Yeah.
liquidation price.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although yeah, it's going up.
Basically, the reason they need Bitcoin to go up though is because so you know part of the flywheel is the convertible debt funds, right? Which they want the volatility of the underlying asset. So the more volatile that MicroStrategy is, the more attractive the convertible debt is to these convertible debt arb funds. The tricky part though is they do get capped, one on ownership percentages, but the other on like LTV of the entire business. So if they won't buy more debt of MicroStrategy at a certain point if BTC price doesn't really go up, because then LTVs are starting to become risky. Like these are very savvy investors, and they understand kind of the risks here to some extent, and so, or to a great extent. So I think like you do need these other guys to come in, buy it, raise Bitcoin price, because then now the leverage on MicroStrategy is much smaller and they can get another tranche in. So like you really need these other guys to come in behind to help just break through this seemingly infinite amount of supply here.
Yeah. What what do you guys think about ETH? I've seen some bullish takes on like all these ETH treasury. You know, you have Espeth and Tom Lee's doing his ETH treasury company. Like, do you think that like we could be a little bit back on ETH? The chart looks pretty good.
I mean, ETH looks pretty good. I think that it seems like it'll hopefully keep trending well. But like, I don't think ETH is going to go on some idiosyncratic thing where it's like just ETH and everything else does poorly, like a Bitcoin type rally, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because like I think ETH going up is good for the rest of crypto, whereas
But do you
Bitcoin
think,
going up
like,
is not necessarily good. Well,
I
it's
feel like
actually, it seems like it's bad.
literally since like December, or like even before that, like we've been trashing ETH pretty hard for the past 2 years, maybe.
I have not, to be clear.
I don't know. I still like. It's just.
I mean, like relative
personally,
to like other
it's
stuff you could
fine.
buy, we're just like it's way too expensive. Like, do you think that anything is like really changed, or maybe it's just as like short-term flows could be pretty good?
I think
I
the
think it's a
flows
momentum trade.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. I feel the same way. I still think it's. I still, I feel the same way as when we last discussed it. I still hold my same ETH I had before. Yeah, I don't know. Some part of me thinks it's kind of like binary, where either ETH is like valuable as an L1, and like the properties that it has are valuable, and we shouldn't price it on cash flows or anything like that in that case. And the whole of crypto is sort of valuable and justified. Or if ETH's properties and don't matter, then it's like the most overvalued asset on earth, and the rest of the crypto industry is all comp to that, so it's all overvalued too.
The thing is, though, Jose, is that you don't need to hold ETH to get those values, though. That's the thing. Like you can use Ethereum.
This is the 2018 like ETH shorts, Tetris Capital, right? Like and John Pfeffer and stuff argument on these things. Like you don't need ETH to go up for ETH to
yeah, but that was after like a 90% drawdown.
Yeah.
It was after like I think they started posting it at like $500, and the bottom was like 70 or something.
The biggest, I mean, ETH has honestly been a victim of its own success. Like the NFT bubble really did kind of like distort expectations and stuff, and I think that's just kind of the reality of it. Like I don't even know if Ethereum did anything super wrong, to be honest. It's just expectations got so high.
I mean, it never scaled well.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, my opinion hasn't really changed on it. I think Tom Lee is a great spokesperson that they got, and he's pushing this whole like, if you're bullish on stablecoins, you got to be bullish on ETH. It's like not really true, but hey, it's like a good pitch, right? If you can get people to like get on board this, I think he's a really.
I think Cyberfund wrote a pretty good ETH
tab, but it's like, I don't know. I don't think ETH is going to like 10K or something.
Yeah, I think you can get maybe a move to 3 and change.
I can see it getting back. I think it like if ETH goes back to 4K, I just think that's good for crypto in general. Like I don't see a world where ETH gets bid and other assets don't.
No, me neither.
Because you're getting this non-Bitcoin flows, this non-Bitcoin bid.
And ETH holders are just more shitcoiners, right?
I think like the stars are aligning for a move higher, right? Where sentiment is generally bearish, people are underexposed, and then at the same time you have the stablecoin narrative, you have Tom Lee coming in, who's a great shill. You have these treasury plays popping up, which are actually, you kind of need someone to kickstart the bid and get momentum going. So the stars are aligning. But I just don't see there being enough broad-based interest in the asset to carry it too far because it's so big. Like you need everyone to think it's going a lot higher for this thing to double,
Yeah.
like a lot higher.
GCR 10K call still intact.
Was there a date on that?
No, he just said eventually.
Yeah.
Tom Lee's Tom Lee is honestly a huge win for them. I'm looking at like some of his tweets right now, saying some bullish things.
And it helps that he's very bullish Bitcoin, right? So as that gets proven right, then people lend credence to his other ideas, crypto specifically.
Strategy now holds 600,000 BTC. It's so big, it might have a sovereign put. I don't know what that means, but it sounds really bullish. He compares the BTC Treasury valuation to model to Exxon's premium on proven oil reserves. All right. Keep bull posting.
Do you guys want to talk the pump sale?
Yeah, let's do it. So yeah, this is probably the biggest news happening right now. Pump just there are a lot of whispers about their ICO. They just came out with a tweet where they sort of confirm it. They confirm the date. It's Saturday, July 12th. It looks like they're raising 1.3 billion, so 33% of the token supply will go out in this ICO, and then 24% reserved for community and ecosystem initiatives, which I assume will be an airdrop. If not, the trenches will be in disbelief. At least part of it should be an airdrop, I guess. 20% team, 2.4% ecosystem fund, 2% foundation, 13% existing investors, and then 2.5% for liquidity.
It says airdrop in the announcement. They are doing an airdrop.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
It says airdrop.
All right.
Soon.
Nice. Yeah, this is people are very split on this, right? There's some people on the timeline saying that it's max extraction, max greed. Others are pretty excited about it. Yeah, where's everyone landing on this? And maybe I can share my opinion last.
I think, well, first of all, we got a report on this coming out tomorrow. So if you're not a Delphi member, sign up. I think the original rumors were 25% in the raise, and now it's 33%. That seems kind of bullish to me. There's probably a ton of and the private side is all sold out. So out of the 33%, it's 18% private, 15% public. So the public ICO is like 600 mil. I personally think that this thing is going to sell out really quick. I'm kind of rattled that I'm blocked from it, to be honest. I think the main risk here is just what we've seen over the last week with this bonk launchpad, and I'm not really too worried about that. I think people are kind of overreacting to that a bit, and maybe that'll keep the demand for this down a bit less than the public. But I think Pump has much more broad ambitions than what Bonk's Launchpad is trying to do. Pump is trying to go after streamers, going after Web2 general public. It seems like Bonk Launchpad is just it's just a bunch of people that don't like Pump. And they're trying just to do the meme coin thing. I think it's really taken off because of this useless coin and this Bonk guy on Twitter who people follow who made a lot of money on Bonk. His name is literally Bonk guy. So yeah.
The initial raise was they were trying to do 200 mil private, which is the 5%, and then 800 mil via public. So I think the 200 mil I know filled up pretty quickly in June, and then they've kind of rejiggered and I guess taken 200 mil out of the public down to 600, and then bumped up the private from added another 520 to the private on top of the original 200, right? So you get the 18% and 15%. And then they've also, right, so the all of the Solana they've accumulated and sold, that's still on their treasury. Like they still have all that cash. So if you think about how much money they have, like it's an obscene amount, right? They and it like if you think that they're not gonna, if you think they're gonna fail, it's gonna take a while for that to happen, and a lot of money spent and marketing and growth. And I think like there's a world where they could create something very compelling because they are really good at growth, as seen from what they've done with Pump. Very ambitious, right? Their tweet was, "We're going to take down Facebook, Twitch." So they're basically going after the streaming market and thinking about how to capture the Zoomer attention. So I think this is going to create a lot of buzz and should hopefully, I think there's a world where it can actually bring a decent amount of capital back into the crypto markets if they can start to really appeal to the normie audience. And there are second order effects of that, right? As capital flows in, that means you kind of get into these alt cycles and capital flows, and then that means capital that wasn't going to be even related to anything on Pump.Fun starts to flow in because other stuff comes in. And then once the money is in, you kind of have these ideas and use cases that didn't really exist before because they're kind of dependent on some degree of speculation and just risk taking. And so, we've seen the broader reflexivity there. I think in terms of the impact on markets, we saw, naturally this is a very big drain of liquidity, right? The prime example was kind of what happened with Trump and how everything kind of dumped because everyone's piling money into that. I think that part is behind us because you've already had two instances for that to get priced in. One was the June announcement where you saw an alt sell-off, and then more recently earlier this week when the Gate stuff launched and you saw some assets rapidly sell off. And so I think Gate then took back that announcement, but it was clearly a very polished one. Like the site was polished, the stats were correct, so it seemed like it was more of a early release than an incorrect one. So I think you've had multiple opportunities, and then today as well. So you've had all of this stuff get priced in. So I mean, you probably potentially get another liquidity drain when this actually takes place, but I do think a lot of the liquidity has already been set aside for people to participate. So I do think most of the pain from that is behind us.
Yeah, I also think that the people who are like, why are they raising so much money? You don't need this much money. It's a wrong comparison to like a normal crypto project because it's not like they're raising this money for engineers. Like obviously some of it's going to go towards engineers, but the main is just like the amount of money that they're going to be spending on like streamers and marketing and everything. And you've never really had a crypto project that's needed to kind of like do this because they haven't been going after this market, right? So
I'm curious what Jose thinks. Is Jose, you've been pretty vocal about like teams that raise too much money typically doesn't work out well. But do you think it's different here?
I mean, it definitely generally doesn't work out well. I don't really ever want to hate on ambition, especially in crypto. Like we need more of that. Like them going after Facebook and Instagram and stuff is pretty dope. Um, but yeah, they have 700 million in the bank. They're raising one. Well, we can assume based on how much they've made in rough burn, they're raising 1.3. They're literally gonna have a $2 billion kind of war chest. And even when you look at it in the context of like social media platform raises, it's probably like the third biggest ever, right? I think Snapchat Series F was 1.8 billion. ByteDance raised 3 billion in 2018, but that was a SoftBank round. It was the most valued startup in the world at the time.
Bank
Like,
special.
yeah, like all the other ones were much smaller. Like even Reddit raised their Series F in 21, peak peak bubble at like it was a 700 million raise. So it's kind of and when you look at like just the raises happening right now, even like Figure, probably the most hyped humanoid robotic startup, raised like 1.5 billion, right? So it's a lot. But yeah, I mean the thing with these big raises is they have the potential to um like startups have to focus on just one. I kind of said this already, but generally they have to focus on just one core thing or like a few priorities to get right. um, and that's the most important thing. Like and that's what the best startup founders do. They're really good at identifying what the best, highest leverage thing they can do is, and relentlessly focusing on that. And that's what we really see with the best people in our portfolio, like Guy and stuff. You bring them an idea, and they've already thought about it and why it's not a priority right now. Whereas the kind of lesser founders will like see, oh, that's a good idea. Maybe we'll do that and like add it to the list or like. And when you have $2 billion, suddenly you have too much money to just focus on three priorities. You have to do like 10 things at once, right? Because if you don't, you're like, why do you have $2 billion? So that's like the main concern. Um, and just like it seems like they haven't deployed that much of their 700 million, and so going from sort of a run rate, I don't know what their run rate is going to be, what their plans are for these funds. That's also kind of an interesting part of this. Like, I don't think you've ever had such a big raise with so little like transparency. Maybe EOS in crypto was the last one, but so little transparency in terms of what they actually want to do and stuff. Um, I really hope they succeed. I'm like excited for it. I would I'll be trying to participate at this valuation. I think it makes sense. I do think there's the potential for it to go wildly wrong and bring some bad attention to crypto, and I hope that that doesn't happen. Basically,
I don't know if like bad attention crypto at this point. I feel like we've got a lot of bad
Wait,
attention. I think one thing though on the
we
big
don't need
raise,
more.
like yeah,
Yeah,
I agree. One thing on the big raise though, like did you see today that Monad bought this stablecoin company?
yeah,
So it's like you're seeing some of these projects that like Monad was the one that raised a ton of money, right? They raised, which actually pales in comparison to this now. I think they raised like 200 or 300 mil or something, and everybody was like, "This is so much money for an L1." And now they're straight up doing like M&A with that money.
Mhm.
So it is kind of, I don't know, it's like a weird kind of like dynamic now. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, 4 billion FDV with a company it's going to have like 1.5 to 2 billion of cash on the balance sheet. Seems like
Yeah.
a pretty good bet to make.
Yeah. I think they
What?
said what 25% they're going to send to the token of revenues.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
what I was going to ask. So 25% of the top line revenue.
Yeah, I think like basically
Yeah.
the if you comp it on trailing 3 month fundamentals to some of the majors, it should be in like the 8 to 10 B range.
Makes sense. Yeah, it says revenue. I'm just on DeFi Law. It says revenue analyzed is 400 mil right now. But then, why do they do this? Fees versus revenue annualized. Fees annualized is 700 mil, but revenues 430. I don't know why they do that. But I was just looking at Bonk versus like what Bonk's numbers are just like going vertical. What is? Do we think this is kind of like them trying to like ride off the attention and maybe plowing some money into their own platform, sort of thing, or what do we think's happening? Like Pump today has made like 500 grand, and Bonk has made 1.3 million. Or sorry, Pump's made 900k. Bonk's made 1.3 million. Anyone have a take on that?
I mean, the bonk thing, it seems, as I said before, it seems to just be this useless coin really kind of propelled it. This like one meme coin, and then they've got this bonk guy who's been chilling it a lot. And then there are a lot of people within Solana that are big like bonk holders, and they never liked Pump. And so they've been kind of pushing this. It does seem like some token deployers have moved over recently, which is kind of who you want to get. So we'll see, but it's like I do think that they just have completely different ambitions. Like, I think the Pump team has always had this vision for like they want to be TikTok, financialization of TikTok, all this stuff. The Bonk guys are just like doing like this launch pad because they didn't like Pump, I think, and it's more like a crypto only type deal. Versus the Pump thing has a lot bigger ambitions.
Yeah, I think the bunk guys are more soul aligned, which
Yeah,
resonates with the community and holder base.
Yeah, so that's a good thing to go into. I definitely feels like that as well. So for Pump, what do you think happens to Soul, and do you think, like, I'm not sure they really care about it as much if their ambitions are, much bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense for them to stay on Sol for a while, right? There's the liquidity and just building your own chains of distraction, I think, right now, and so eventually, sure, but um, the simplistic push and pull is they will bring a lot of capital attention to Sol if they're successful, but they will also be selling Sol on the back end. So
Or
it's like, do you
potentially
think?
like leave at some
Do you,
point.
sorry, say it again.
Or potentially like leave at some point.
Yeah, but like assuming that's probably like a year away or something. The big push and pull is basically attention and capital coming in versus Sol pressure on Sol as they get out.
Yeah.
It's hard to say what it'll be. I think the positive side happens more quickly than the negative side, right? The selling of Sol is this kind of drawn out scenario, whereas if they really take off to a wider audience, that is felt much more acutely. So I think on a short-term basis, it's net bullish Sol, and then maybe longer term, the because all the flows happen up front, the selling can offset that. But I do think it's net short-term bullish, TBD long-term.
And what about like Sol Eco? Like, with the Trump stuff, we saw like basically every single, and obviously that was like a surprise and unannounced, but like literally every single Solana coin just got wrecked, like just insta dump to buy Trump. Obviously,
that
this
was
is,
also on chain. This is on sexes and everything too.
yeah,
I think it should be bullish.
for the Eco.
Yeah, if it
Yeah.
sells out quickly, because that's also, again, sure, there's probably a lot of money that is selling Sol or already sold Sol or sold Sol coins to do this, but there's also a bunch of just money that's on centralized exchanges, and people would maybe sell some other assets too. So
Plus
it's not the
perps, like people are gonna trade this thing with perps too.
yeah.
That doesn't really require as much selling because of the coin margin.
I think any Sol weakness related to this is kind of over now. So if you get Sol weakness, it's like for another reason. It's not because like Pump people are prepping for the Pump sale or whatever,
Plus you have the ETFs
Yeah.
coming soonish.
Well, the Sol ETF that launched is honestly, it's been doing pretty well. And so if you get these big ones that actually come in, again, that should be pretty good. It'd be interesting to see like the one that's live now is staking. The ones that are going to be coming aren't going to have staking, but they're with like bigger firms,
Yeah,
right?
Wait, so do you know what the net, because it has a 75 basis point fee, but do you know how much they're giving back in staking?
I don't know. No, I don't know what percent of Sol they stake, because with an ETF you need to have available for redemptions, and it takes like a day or two to.
And who are they using for staking?
I think they're using. I don't know 100%. For some reason, I thought they were using like Marinade, but maybe that's a different one that I'm not.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, it's like the Osprey, right?
Yeah.
But yeah. Do you want to talk this GMX exploit or like the prediction market stuff, or?
I think the big thing is going to be how quickly it sells out, right? That's going to be.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely bearish, right? If it doesn't, just as a reflection of capital in the space in general. Whereas if it does, I'm in the camp that it'll happen fairly quickly because you don't have a lockup. So it seems like a pretty easy asset to bid with relatively low downside.
Yeah. To be honest, you actually could see on-chain kind of nuke after the TGE because of this.
Because people bid
it on-chain,
yeah.
but not sure. It's not. It's different than Trump. Trump thing was just like very different.
Yeah, I think it could. There's also the argument where that it could actually be a bit stimulative to the on-chain stuff because it can be a transfer of assets from on exchange to on-chain, right? Because you can have the centralized exchanges bidding it, and then
Wealth effect.
yeah,
The GMX was a re-entry. Said versus the banks.
Reentrancy. It's the fucking always EVM. It's the thing that always does it. Reentrancy.
I know.
Every time.
That fucking sucks for them. This has also been around. It was the V1, which is kind of insane.
This goes back to like, they stole USDC 40 mil, and then Circle didn't freeze it. Arbitrum didn't try anything with their centralized sequencer. And this kind of brings us back to like that SWE hack that happened a few weeks ago, and everyone was talking about how like, oh, SWE's not decentralized, all this, they froze this hackers' money and everything. But I mean, credit to SWE, they're not pretending that they're super decentralized, right? And in this case, it's what, like Arbitrum and Circle are just going to pretend like this hack didn't happen.
Yeah, I know. I
Have the
can't believe
power
Arbitrum didn't do something if they had the power. Maybe they're worried about legal stuff, but like GMX literally like built them up.
Yeah, GMX was Arbitrum for a long time, right?
Yeah, until Hyperliquid came along.
Now they just care about Robinhood, maybe.
Yeah, that's pretty fucking annoying. That really sucks. $40 million exploit, brutal.
Yeah.
It's bad because it's been around for so long. It's like,
yeah,
I can't imagine
it
has to have been upgraded or code updated. I can't imagine there's been a reentrancy bug out there in production for 4 years.
I don't know. The Curve exploit and the Balancer exploits from like last year or whenever those happened were like 4 or 5 year old bugs that were just sitting out there. Like these things are just, it's scary. Because these days the way you hack is actually not this. Like these days, most of the hacks are social engineering. They're like front end. Like hacking a front end is way easier than hacking a smart contract now, right? Like we've learned a lot. They've gone pretty robust. But if you can just change the website of a front end and get people to sign a bad message, that's like way easier, right? So those are most of the hacks you see now. This is what the Bybit hack was. Is like they changed the front end.
That was crazy, though.
That was crazy.
That
was crazy. Yeah. No, I know it was crazy, but it's like this is where hackers are going now because smart contracts have gone pretty good. So it is. It always is. Yeah, kind of. I guess scary when you see old protocols that have been around for so long and used for so long get hacked.
Do we think there's $1.3 billion of demand for Pump? Sorry to go back, but like, do we think there's $1.3 billion of demand to like sell this out?
Well, you need 600.
I don't think
they've already sold the private.
Yeah, I don't think
that's the thing is I don't know if the private was initially 200 and then that got filled up quickly, but they've upsized it quite a bit.
Yeah. Like I don't think
why it seems kind of bullish. Like if they upsized it from it was going to be 5%, now it's 18%.
Well,
like
it would have been way more bullish if they didn't, and then just everyone had to buy liquid. But like in terms of like the chart, but they obviously like have taken that into account and like feel there's more than enough demand.
I know they were limiting funds by size to ensure that if you wanted to get your full allo, you needed to buy on just live token.
Yeah. So I don't think they would have done it without like they wouldn't have upsized it this much without like kind of having a decent pulse on demand.
Yeah.
I'd love a poly market, which I know is a good segue to our next topic on whether it sells out and Like 15 minutes, an hour, 3 hours? Curious. Where do you guys put it?
I think it sells out like pretty quickly, like under an hour.
Under an hour. Oh shit! I was gonna say within the first 24.
But like,
I don't know. They are
how
blocking
are you
US.
guys expecting it to rip to 10 billion so quickly if you think it takes 24 hours to sell out?
Because it's very different.
Why?
600,
The
well,
group of
600
buyers.
million of, like, if you have 600 million of buyers, that's going to move price.
Yeah.
600
No,
million
for
into an
sure.
order book is a lot different than.
I don't know, definitely. But I mean, like, you 700 million of private demand gone, and then you take 600 million of this more public demand, and then it's like you're gonna get an incremental how much to like pump this thing up 2-3x. Like it's
But it's true, if
a
they
lot
have
of
2 bill of cash, who's actually selling it at the 4 bill?
There's so much cash.
It's like your
they
max
have to
50%.
fail upward.
I think 4 bill is like a pretty good floor for sure. But I think
You
it's
don't have
like,
access to that cash though. Like,
Yeah, but it's more like this cash is going to be spent on growth and
they should
attention.
put it back
You
into
also have the
chart,
most profitable
the old
business
Hyperliquid
in
playbook.
crypto and 2 bill of cash. Like, it should definitely trade at least double.
Like Hyperliquid was the most profitable business in crypto.
No, but
Maybe
they might do the old Hyperliquid playbook. Just market a 100 million into the chart.
Yeah,
right?
they do
They
the
should
raise
definitely do
and then
some
they just
painting of the chart for sure. I
don't know
would
if they care about
expect
the
some
chart.
painting. You definitely care about the chart.
Yeah,
I just don't know.
these guys are meme coin specialists. You don't think they care about the chart?
So they have your 1.3 billion, and they own 75% of the revenue in the equity. I mean, I'm sure they care about the chart, but there's no guarantee that they will. There's been a lot of crypto projects with a lot of money that refuse to bid their token with it, rightly or wrongly. But anyway, prediction market. So we had this Zelensky suit thing. I don't really have a great or interesting take on it, I don't think. But prediction markets generally have been purring. Like Polymarket has grown a lot.
I mean,
And
Polymarket and Kalshi both just announced those raises a few weeks ago, right? Both at like 1 to 2 bill
Are they
valuations.
gonna do a token Polymarket? Like,
Probably at some point.
unsure, is that like is that still the best way to go for a successful project?
I
Not
think that
100%
they're
sure.
like
I
alluded
mean,
to it.
hopefully, man. If it's
know.
not the best way to go, then what the fuck is?
Yeah, I mean,
2028.
you think? I guess that's the question. Do you think Polymarket equity or token trades higher at this point?
Well, it depends with the split. Like, it
Yeah.
Yeah.
depends.
They send value to the token. I think it would trade.
If they do
rich.
20,
This is the biggest fundamental problem that has to get fixed in crypto, though. Is like we just cannot have dual equity token.
Borgs. Is that what that's trying to do?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's okay to have dual if you have like fixed and transparent value flows, and then ultimately the question becomes: is the sum of the parts greater than what they'd be if it was all focused towards one?
I don't know. I
think it should
think
all
it's
be
like when you
token.
buy a stock, you own the company. Like,
Yeah.
No, I mean,
I
I'd
think
prefer it for sure.
the best way now is like all token, and then have an equity company that just commits to like putting all the IP and trademarks and stuff there, and then going public and running a treasury play on itself. Like imagine like Uniswap Labs, just like all the front end fees and stuff, using all that to buy uni tokens, and then having a public token that you can ape, a public stock that you can ape to get exposure to Uniswap, and that stock is just buying back the token. So everything gets funneled towards the token, but you have like an equity vehicle just as a way to reach the TradFi market. That's my preference, but yeah,
That would be nice.
hopefully someone does that. But yeah, prediction markets are doing really well.
yeah, and everybody like thought they were going to die right after the election.
After the election, yeah. I mean, Polymarket's done a really good job getting integrated places and partnerships, like the All In partnership and getting integrated into X and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Wait, what's going on with the X thing? Like, I saw that headline, but I haven't not much news since then.
Yeah, I also saw the headline and haven't had news since then. I think the idea is that it was going to be like actually integrated, so you could do Polymarket's bets on X, right?
Yeah, the tricky part on the poly market stuff is just like it's expensive, or just prediction markets in general, is that it's very expensive to market make. This is mostly an issue when there's only one, right? Because market makers can't hedge elsewhere, and so they need to get compensated a lot for this risk. That's what they were spending quite a bit of their money on, was just getting these markets off the ground. And so that's kind of what you're seeing with some of these other guys raising with novel mechanisms that help bootstrap for the long tail, right? So it's like, I'm not going to try and compete with Polymarket necessarily on who's going to win the election, but I can do a much better job creating an environment for users to generate markets that will have deeper liquidity than other platforms. And I think that's kind of been the pitch. With Kalshi, what helps is that they can obviously just tap into some of Polymarket's liquidity. I haven't really tracked how the two have done in terms of volume relative to each other. I'd be curious because I know Kalshi raised at a really rich val.
Oh, look.
Not rich because that's implying it's expensive, but just a high val.
Yeah. Agreed. But yeah, I mean that and what are the most interesting mechanisms you've seen, I guess, in the private markets for that, or just anywhere?
So just like novel mechanisms on AMMs, right? These things need to be decentralized. So we invested in one called XO, where it uses a modified AMM where rather than when you with an AMM, it has two assets. You're buying one and selling the other. So you're depositing liquidity of one asset and withdrawing the other. Here, the mechanism basically, when you're buying, you're just creating new, call it yes shares, right? And so the liquidity just goes into the pool, and you're creating more shares, but it doesn't necessarily withdraw. And so it gets withdrawn during the redemption process, but it helps that early stage liquidity because in order, like with each new participant, liquidity actually grows rather than in a scenario where you're just buying and selling and it grows via fees to some extent. So there's that. There's another one, Contra, which we're investors in, which uses something called a gradual limit order book, which uses basically, it's kind of a time-based mechanism for price discovery, but it helps a lot on the customization of orders and basically allowing people to express directional bets and have these assets sit there and basically allow it's all for this idea of how do you create user generated markets where a random spat on Twitter can actually be turned into something that everyone can participate in. So there are those. I think like what's been really cool with prediction markets is the fact that this is where some of the smartest money ends up going because
Yeah,
it's like this is where inside info gets
monetized.
exactly. And so if you know whether something is going to happen, whether you're in Congress or whatever you're doing, this is a great way to get info. So it's almost just like not even trading there, because oftentimes for some of these events you're the dumb money if you're just purely speculating, but using that info to then make other decisions, in a world where that market has enough liquidity that it can be signal.
Yeah, and it's been remarkably accurate. And I feel like right now, and like it's just harder and harder to figure out what's true, right? I think AI has made this easier if you know how to use it, but in general, like it's really hard to figure out what's true in the world. And Polymarket's actually a go-to for me, especially when the war was happening and stuff. Like it's pretty interesting the way that it actually like works much better than the news, than like pundits on Twitter. You can just see, again, this was the theory behind it, right? Why academics always loved it so much, and why I actually got really excited about it too when I first joined crypto and read Vitalik's post about it. But it's cool to see it actually play out, like the way it kind of front ran the election in the Iran war. It had some pretty good picks. Yeah, it's been cool to see.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the volume, but Kalshi's website kind of sucks to get the volume. You have to download it. But I think they've done a lot on sports betting.
Yeah, they kind of like legal loophole. You can do sports betting because it's like, well, you're not betting on sports, you're predicting on sports.
What is that? What they say?
That's how they ended up
Betting
doing it.
you're predicting.
Well, it's different. It's different. It doesn't count as gambling. It's like prediction market. It's different thing.
How is it?
They let you like ape the Super Bowl on in your brokerage or something. Well, not like Kalshi did, but I think I think Kalshi did. But like Interactive Brokers even had these too, and they're not like licensed to be gambling. But it was like, no, it's a prediction market.
Is it because it's peer to peer instead of peer to house? Because I mean, a sports bet is a prediction, right? Like I'm getting certain odds on a team, and that's a function of my predicted probability of them winning.
Yeah,
So
there's a bunch of weird rules in gambling. Like the whole thing with DraftKings was like it's a game of skill, and so it shouldn't be regulated like gambling. And then it's like some states align with that, some don't. I don't know. There's a lot of weird gambling, and there's like this new tax code thing that might only make you be able to write off like 90% of your gambling losses, which would kind of ruin that industry of like poker and stuff.
Just be a better gambler.
Dude, if you could only write off, like you're screwed.
Yeah.
10% haircut every year.
It's an interesting one. Like, what do you guys think of that? It's probably not something.
What, only being able to write off 90% of your gambling?
Just gambling generally. Like how
gambling is fucking so bad.
Yeah, gambling I think is very bad, but it's like some people are professional poker players, and this is how they make their living.
Yeah, but the vast majority of
poker,
people
I would consider
poker is different. Yeah,
I think if you want to get rid of gambling, you shouldn't do it in weird bullshit backdoor tax like regulation. You should just actually make it illegal, right?
I don't know. I think that's pretty effective. Like, I think making gambling companies able to advertise the way they do now, like the way Stake is.
No. But this is what I'm saying. I'm saying to do it this way by changing the tax code is bullshit. Like it's like how the people tried to get rid of the crypto industry by going backdoor to banks and everything. It's the same thing. Like because they couldn't make it illegal directly.
And it feels like a slippery slope. Like you can't tell people they can't do something. I don't know. It's not the government's role to stop them from doing that. That's a little like same way with cigarettes, right? It's just like you put warning labels and you do all this stuff, but ultimately people need to have agency.
Yeah, for sure. But it's just like the amount that it gets pushed on and like the promotions and stuff. Like I'm thinking like a lot of people around my age, like university age, just like go and just get fucked. And then they learn and they're like, okay, I'm not gambling ever again. It's like they get burnt. It's like you touch the stove, you get burned, and then you don't go back. But like some people can't really help themselves. I agree. You don't want to force people what to do, but it's like just the accessibility to life.
Yeah, I think the big thing is basically you need to put in, people can input like salary into what they're doing, right? So you can limit the amount that they do based on their earning capacity or their assets, right? And so there it's protecting them. It's like, listen, you're gambling more than you should be able to. Like, I think stuff like that can help to taper, the people that ruin themselves completely.
Yeah. I actually disagree with Setters. I think that is the right way to do it. Like tax code, like taxing them more and not letting them advertise, like these kinds of things.
Like, think about someone.
I just think that
they'll just get completely fucked. They won't understand.
Yeah, it's just they're just getting double whacked.
I was kind of a capitalism, or like not a capitalism, but like a free markets, I guess, or more of a free markets maxi. Since I've been kind of reading more about the Chinese model and how it works, I actually think there's something to some state direction.
Well, like, for sure,
in the sense that like
we gotta edit this
like
out.
we need to.
I'm joking.
In the US, like you have the smartest people in the world can go do whatever they want, right? Like and you had for I think before AI, like all the smartest people were just basically trying to get us to click on more ads and spend more time on social media, and it fucking worked, right? They're really smart. they succeeded. Like everyone was fucking addicted to social media, depressed, like especially for kids getting bullied and stuff. And in China, they create subsidies such that if the smartest people go work on solar panels and electric vehicles and chip companies, and it turns out that like works pretty well. Like, and gambling, like porn, OnlyFans, all this stuff is just a tax on society. Like it's just people losing money or like wasting money on shit that's like really bad for them. And I don't know that like I think it's kind of a bug in it's like similar to how you have like public goods that are underweighted by the market, and then the other one, right, like pollution and stuff, these negative externalities and positive externalities that aren't accounted for by the market. I think it's the same thing with these gambling and OnlyFans and like porn and all this stuff. And I really do think the government should try and set an overall direction for where human capital should be focusing on, and like have because like in Europe and in the US, we try these subsidies things, and then there's one case of fraud, and the newspapers. That's another thing I've kind of like changing my mind on is just freedom of the press. Like I think our press is so poisonous. Like they just like there's very little really good journalism where they're doing these deep investigations and presenting facts. It's more just like look at the like this guy is friends with this guy, and like maybe there was a corruption, and just like slandering people's reputations makes it so that no one smart ever wants to be in politics. And also like the fraud, like we have these subsidies, but then there's one case of fraud and we remove the whole thing, whereas in China they just accepted, of course there's going to be fraud, and there was a lot of fraud with the like 100 billion plus subsidies they did in EVs, but they got they got BYD out of it, and that was worth the whole thing. um I don't know. I just feel like there's some stuff to learn. I definitely would not want to make the trade-offs that China made. I would not want to live in
That's the thing,
China.
is it's all
But
trade-offs, right? Like if you
but I'm
have
saying we can shift the trade-offs more
how
towards.
like if you have like the news, the reason news sucks is because it's for profit, and so you're just doing whatever gets the most attention, right? So then what's the solution? State-owned media? That's horrible, because
No, I
eventually
don't
you're
think
just gonna
that's a
have a bad.
solution. I think
But like
more
I think
for
broadly
example.
with this stuff is like, with the US, you have these the beauty of democracy is that there isn't really this totalitarian control, but the issue is you're operating on 4-year cycles, and so you can't really do any kind of long-term planning. You're just like playing constant short-term games. Whereas China gets to play the long-term game, but the big trade-off is it's a dictatorship. So like
Mhm.
in a world where you can have this like
Yeah, but
benevolent
you
dictator
also
that
have
helps.
you also have these lobbyists that like are there all the time, that push through rules, like industry pushes through rules that like stay there throughout the cycles, like all this. And like maybe a good example is like maybe it'll change with like a radical administration change, like the RFK and Make America Healthy Again stuff. But like, why the fuck are you allowing like provenly cancerous causing dyes in like food, or like the number one item on government subsidied food support, like food stamps, is like Pepsi
McDonald's.
or, or,
Yeah.
or whatever soda. It's soda. It's literally fucking soda. And it's like they have like industry has captured a certain amount of the regulation where that goes through like multi-cycle, and then that's just like bad, right? Like you have
Yeah.
like farm, like some pharma stuff that's bad, like some health stuff that's bad, like though, and that's just crazy. Like the incentives are just completely out of line.
I
Yeah. I
think
mean,
Jose's original point was about like letting like Hasu. Remember Hasu had this post a few years ago about like you should be limiting how much like kids should play video games and stuff, and everyone kind of like ripped him a new one for it. It's like it's a hard discussion because gambling for instance is they've done all these studies in the UK after they like legalized and everything, and it's really bad, right? Um, there's not a lot of good that comes out of it. You see people like Harlebois, who's like this famous gambler in NBA, talk about like how bad it is that it's being legalized and all this stuff, while he is like an outlier, right? And you look at this with like crypto too. There's a lot of, I think we're all kind of happy that there weren't laws preventing us from like buying stuff early on, right? Because we thought we were like
It's just the
smart
ability,
enough to like
the
actually.
ability to promote it so heavily to like young kids.
Yeah, the advertising's crazy. It's always sad when I see like a commercial and it's like Wayne Gretzky shilling gambling, and it's like, dude, why are you like, you should be a better role model, I feel like than shilling Bet365 or something on TV to
Yeah,
kids,
you pay him so much money, dude.
it's
Like,
just
I
like
Yeah.
know.
down your throat. It's like drugs. Like I feel like you can get them, but oh my god, Canada is legalized.
Do you ever see there's that one billboard?
Advertise. What?
You see, there's that one billboard. It's like 20% of gamblers go bankrupt. It's like, bro, those are pretty good odds. You're offering that up to a gambler.
Well, did you see the South? There's an ad from South Korea or something, and it talks about it's before the FIFA World Cup, and it's these like kids, a commercial, and these kids are talking. It's like, who do you want to win? Who do you want to win? And the one kid is like, I want Germany. They're like, why Germany? He's like, because my dad bet all my money on it, and then Germany won, and it like totally backfired against them. It was like this public service thing.
Yeah, that's funny.
But no,
That's
I
pretty-
mean, yeah, this is a hard topic. We should probably end this.
I do think one way
Yeah.
though is to just limit the downside that people have by putting in earnings requirements, right? Because then you really reduce the chances of people going broke. And so
You have this in Canada. You have to
yeah, I
like
think that makes a
actually
lot of sense.
Yeah, or
declare.
you just can't
Also, limit
advertise.
advertising. Why should
Yeah.
why should they be able to advertise so much?
Yeah, like
It's
this,
just
like
like
cigarettes can't advertise anymore, right? Like that's like basically banned,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
they
it's
have to
tricky.
like freak you
drug
out on
companies can't
fucking
advertise. I think
cartons
that
and
makes a
stuff.
lot of sense.
Well, they're the biggest
In the
advertisers.
U.S. can. In the U.S. they can.
the-
Not
in the
not in like
US they
any
can.
other country in the world, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
the biggest
terrible.
difference from anybody that's not American, because maybe a lot of people listen to this American, they don't understand, but like when you visit the US and you watch like cable TV, it was always like when I was growing up, it was always such a crazy mind blower. It's like there's so many ads for drugs. Like
Yeah.
it's just crazy.
Yeah, every
Um,
ad's a farm
yeah.
ad. Like that shit is the stuff that like you shouldn't be. Yeah, I fully think anyone should be able to do, like free will, do what you want, but you can't be like pushing it on kids, right? Or
Yeah.
pushing this stuff on people.
Step one, get rid of the lottery.
Yeah,
That's just such a tax on the poor.
What pisses me off in Canada is like you could play DFS here for a while, and DFS actually requires some skill. And you
What's
can't do that
DFS?
anymore. And now you just can
What's
just do
DFS?
daily fantasy sports. And now you can only do like the gambling where you're guaranteed to lose, basically, with like the bookies and you're betting on spreads and all that. And you're never gonna make like money on that.
Yeah.
And
And
so
that's
it's like
the issue,
getting
right?
rid of the game of skills, and so like that's why I sympathize, going back to the original point, with the poker people who make their living off of this, because they actually, this is how they live, and you can say this is like not a way you should earn a living or whatever, but
But
I
just
mean,
such a small
But that's the issue is
subsidy.
like, with a lot of government stuff is like if once they get too involved, there's eventual capture, and then it's perverse and it's not even done the right way, and it's just all the bad parts.
I mean, but there's capture now, though, right? Like the reason the drug companies can advertise and the gambling company can advertise is because there was capture. Like, there's no sense in which this is good for society. Oh yeah, it creates jobs for people at these companies, but like, the revenue all comes at the expense of. Well, for drugs it depends, obviously, but for gambling it's coming at the expense of a bunch of addicts losing money. I don't know. I just think high level we're more there's stuff that's not profitable that's clearly good for society, and there's stuff that's really profitable that isn't good, right? And the government, you kind of want to funnel people, you kind of want to correct those two imbalances, and also funnel people towards more long term, like help people, encourage people to think more long term about what the country needs. And just one last thing, we can cut all this stuff, by the way, if
no, I thought this was
not
a good
interested.
discussion.
Wait, dude,
The-
I have
the-
a
the-
question on you on what you're saying with this China.
Oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So what like what do you think in like let's say like 50 years from now that China is going to have like some of the biggest companies in the world, because like all like the really innovative
Yeah.
big companies are in the US, right? Like almost
So
all
that's
of them.
really interesting. That was a really interesting thing from this report. It was actually linked on the BG Squared podcast. It's like a 100-page report on China and their various like innovation programs. I highly recommend people read it. It's actually like an easy read. And the conclusion is basically that they've done subsidies for a bunch of different industries. Like we're talking tens to hundreds of billions of subsidies depending on the industries. Like they did chips, they did obviously EVs, they did solar panels and renewable technology, and then they did AI too.
And I think they did something on humanoids as well.
Biotech. I think biotech was the
They're
one that they did.
robotic.
And it's really interesting. What they found is that the subsidies worked really well when there was no 0 to 1 innovation required, but just 1 to X. So for instance, solar panels making them more efficient, battery technologies making them more efficient, EVs like making them better and cheaper, like that worked really well because you kind of have, if you think about it, you're giving subsidies and then you have 100 different people competing. And so they have to just be extremely efficient and find the best way to do things. They did not work well for places where you required 0 to 1 innovation. So they failed in chips and biotech. Like China, despite all the money spent on chips, doesn't have really a leading like chips company. Like all their initiatives failed, and the same thing with biotech. And to some extent, the same thing with AI. Like the only one that came out of it was DeepSeek, and they didn't benefit from any of the subsidies. So, but for EVs, you had BYD. For battery technologies, they're leading. For the photovoltaic stuff, they're leading. So it's kind of interesting. They don't sort of posit a reason for why that's the case. It might be that 0 to 1 innovation just requires like more freedom, right? It comes out of creativity and being able to think for yourself and have time to yeah, I don't know exactly what it is, but that all continues to the 0 to 1 stuff seems to continue to come out of the US more than anywhere else in the world.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting. Like,
So do you think
yeah.
that, like, back to the question, like, do you think that there'll have like be some massive Chinese companies that are like bigger than US ones in a few years, or do you think like the head start that these US companies have is like too big?
I don't know. I'm like I honestly on China I'm really fascinated by it. I read about it. I listen to the Cash podcast, and I'll flip like bullish to bearish every week, pretty much. So I don't really like depending who I listen to last. Like on the plus side, they have insanely good hardware chops and insane power, like access to power. I think it's like 3x the US, and they're adding it at ridiculous speed, and they have
Yeah,
like
that
insane
is
battery
the
tech,
scary
insane.
thing.
Yeah.
Like when I
Yeah,
see
The
that, because
energy
it's
stuff is bad because it operates on such a lag too. Like it's not like we can get
yeah,
it up.
that's the thing. That's the thing. And they have the whole supply chain, like all the rare earths, like 70%, like on average of the rare earths, like processed rare earths are coming from there. They have like, yeah, 3 times the power, and it's growing like, I think 5x faster or something than the
yeah.
US
No,
is
the US
growing.
is like going sideways and they're going vertical, like on
Yeah.
the charts. I
So
think that's
that's
scary
pretty
because
scary.
isn't that like
But
the biggest or like one of the biggest kind of caps on AI is just like access to power, and China is
yeah,
going vertical at it and the US is stagnant.
um, yeah, it is. That's the worry. Um, but
Right. We're
the
not there yet, so it's not like a hindrance yet. But the issue is like once you build out all these data centers and it's just ubiquitous, then you start to hit the cap and yeah, it's such a limiting factor because it like takes the fastest I think
The
is
long
I mean
lead
you have
time.
coal and stuff like that, but I think solar is the realistically the fastest to get online in large size.
Yeah, solar relies a lot on batteries and stuff. But I mean, the US is also like deploying like can deploy partnerships with Saudi and stuff like this. So it's not capped by its own power, although obviously that wouldn't be great. But Saudi seems like a pretty close ally right now. I think China, yeah, those are the advantages. But then like there's definitely some like really good bear cases for China, and especially when you speak to founders that work there and that got burnt by various shenanigans that happen there, and like it's a weird place. Like we know some exchange founders who just got shaken down by local police there. Like they got put into a room and asked to transfer tens of millions of dollars of crypto to the local police. Like, and there's founders I know that took a company public, like an e-learning company public on the Nasdaq, and then one day the Chinese government woke up and said, "We don't like e-learning anymore. Like we want people to learn at schools where we can control it," and the company literally went to zero like the next day. And there's all sorts of like things that are, yeah, it's tough to have a strong take on it either way. I think I'm really excited to go there next year. We're planning a trip there. I think between us as founders and maybe some other people too, and like actually meet some people on the ground and understand what's going on, because it's definitely a cool place.
Right. And so going back to those trade-offs of being able to scale infra and direct it or whether you're the best place to build, I think the latter is still the harder one to solve because
Yeah,
you need so many things to align there, right? Between just the people, the environment, the government, all this stuff. And I don't necessarily see China relaxing their grasp there. And so that's probably how, like, going back to your original question of whether China will be the place to be. If you think that he stays in power for a very long time, and then, it seems like, from, again, not my opinion, but just people who are in the know, is just the party has really strong control, and the successor will likely just kind of follow that path. It's hard to see how, that's going to be the place where people want to keep building.
Yeah, I think the innovation versus just like ramping the fuck out of existing technologies and making them better is like a pretty key distinction, because like, they can just like ramp up manufacturing massively, electric, like everything that exists already that gets invented in America, they could basically just ramp up an insane amount.
I mean, but this is changing. Like, they're definitely, like, there's a lot of scientific papers coming out of China now. Also in biotech, like, they've relaxed rules on biotech stuff. I think I've read some stats on this. So it's changing. It hasn't sort of like, there hasn't been, I think, maybe I'm wrong, but a success story, like a 0 to 1 real success story there yet. But they're definitely trending in the right direction. Yeah. Anyway, guys, I think we're good on this pod.
Yeah, went a bit long, but
yeah,
I thought it was good.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, didn't even talk about ECC, but I thought it was good.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
I thought it was like really good location, really good event. Everybody, like, ECC was actually packed every day, which hasn't been the case in a while. Like, there weren't an overbearing amount of side events. Everything was walkable. I didn't have to take an Uber or taxi once. The only downside is that it was like literally too hot. It was a heat wave, but I mean, you're right by a beach and everything. It's hard to complain. They're doing it again there next year, which I think makes sense. I think it'll probably be bigger next year, because I think a lot of people are skeptical this year of the location. But now that they hear that it was like good, they'll probably
it'll suck next year.
Yeah, so it'll suck next year.
Wait, wasn't
it's cool. I ended up going to Nice and Monaco after too, so it's pretty cool to check out. But nice. Yeah, I think the vibes were good at ECC and everything too. So yeah, it wasn't like ETH Denver, where ETH Denver, I think people were kind of disappointed. And ETH Denver was also just a ton of like AI agent stuff. This was more back to like, the Robinhood thing was big. There's some cool talks on like solvers and stuff, a bunch of like DeFi, big like institutional, all this stuff, right? So stable coins. So yeah, I thought overall it was a good ECC. Definitely was like a few orders of magnitude better than Brussels. So, but yeah. Anyways, this pod went kind of
awesome,
long.
guys. So, yeah.
Bye.
Cheers.
Well, yeah. See everybody in a couple weeks.
See you in a couple weeks.